Welcome back to the Vital Signpost.
Hmm.
I think it's safe to say that we've all had at least one experience in our lives where we've wondered, what is sleep really doing for us?
Oh, yeah.
Why do we spend roughly a third of our lives doing it?
Yeah.
Well, we've spent the last 4 episodes of this deep dive exploring really just the science of sleep.
Right.
So for today's episode, what I thought we could do is actually take kind of a step back
Okay.
and look at sleep across the entire human lifespan.
I like that.
So starting from when we're developing in the womb all the way to old age.
Fascinating.
Yeah, really. And some questions that I think would be interesting to answer along the way are, did you know that you were mostly asleep in the womb? Pretty crazy. What's the connection between REM sleep and autism? Why are teenagers so hard to wake up?
Oh, don't get me started.
And how does sleep change as we age, and what can we do about it?
Big questions.
Huge questions. So really the goal here is to not only understand how sleep changes, but why, and what it means for our health and well-being at every stage.
I love it. Let's jump in.
Let's do it. So to kick things off, as I kind of alluded to just a moment ago, we actually start our lives in this state of near constant sleep. It's true.
Absolutely.
While we're just these tiny little humans developing in the womb.
Right.
And in fact, did you know that fetuses spend the vast majority of their time in a sleep-like state? And actually a surprisingly large portion of that time is spent in REM sleep.
Yeah, it is kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? They're essentially submerged in this world of dreams, if you will.
It's pretty wild to think about, like when you think about a fetus just, curled up in the womb.
Right.
Eyes closed, little limbs probably twitching, totally immersed in this dreamlike state.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty incredible. But here's the thing that really gets me.
What's that?
They move a lot during REM sleep, even though, REM sleep is usually associated with muscle paralysis in adults.
Right, right. Well, that's because the system that inhibits muscle movement during REM sleep, it's not fully developed yet.
Okay.
So it's like the brakes haven't been installed on the dream car yet.
Got it.
So they're free to move around as much as they please.
So it's not just some random developmental thing.
No, not at all. There's a reason for all of this movement during fetal REM sleep. It's actually crucial for wiring the brain for all those complex tasks that it will eventually perform.
I mean, it's almost like they're practicing for life outside the womb, but in their dreams.
Yeah.
So why is REM sleep so important for developing brains?
Well, think of REM sleep as this surge of electricity.
Okay.
Right. It stimulates the growth of those neural pathways.
Okay.
And the connections, the synapses between brain cells.
Okay.
It's kind of like a building of vast networking roads.
Okay.
That connect different parts of a city.
Gotcha.
The more roads you build, the more efficiently information can flow throughout the city.
So, are you saying that REM sleep is laying the foundation for like all the complex functions that our brains will eventually perform?
Precisely.
Wow. So much has happened while they're just snoozing away.
Yeah.
But what happens if those crucial bursts of REM sleep are disrupted? Does that affect brain development?
Well, that's a question that's been around for decades, and there's really compelling evidence, particularly from animal studies, that disrupting REM sleep during early development can have, consequences that last a lifetime. For instance, there is a study that deprived infant rats of REM sleep.
Oh, wow.
The results were pretty striking. They show stunted brain development.
Wow.
And later in life, they exhibited these social abnormalities.
Oh, no.
They had problems interacting with their peers.
So, how does that translate to humans?
Well, one area that has received a lot of attention is the connection between REM sleep and autism.
Oh, interesting.
Studies have shown that individuals with autism often have significantly less REM sleep than their non-autistic counterparts.
So, is there a correlation?
There is a correlation, that's right.
Okay.
But the million-dollar question is, does one cause the other?
Right.
Could it be that disruptions in REM sleep during those critical periods of brain development are contributing to the neurological differences that we see in autism?
That's a great question.
It's a question that definitely needs more research.
Yeah.
But it has profound implications for how we approach early interventions for children with autism.
That's a great point. It makes you think about all the things that could be interfering with REM sleep.
Right.
During pregnancy and those early months.
Absolutely. And one of the most potent REM sleep suppressors that we know of is alcohol.
Alcohol, okay.
When a mother drinks alcohol during pregnancy, it crosses the placenta, enters the fetal bloodstream.
Got it.
Directly impacting that developing brain.
So even moderate alcohol consumption could have detrimental impact on the baby's sleep.
Yeah, and ultimately brain development, right?
Oh, wow.
Studies have shown that even relatively small amounts of alcohol can reduce fetal REM sleep, along with things like breathing rate and eye movements.
Wow.
It's just a stark reminder of how vulnerable that developing brain is.
It's true. So does that mean, like, once the baby's born, that vulnerability just disappears? What about, like, alcohol and breast milk?
You bring up a good point because alcohol can easily pass into breast milk.
Right.
And when infants consume that alcohol-laced milk, their sleep is significantly disrupted.
Oh, wow.
They experience increased wakefulness,
Okay.
less REM sleep, more fragmented sleep overall.
Leading to those restless nights that new parents just dread.
Precisely. So the message is clear. Protecting those precious hours of REM sleep during those early stages is paramount for healthy brain development.
And that goes, beyond the womb and into infancy as well.
Absolutely. It's not just about the quantity of sleep, but the quality.
Right.
That balance of REM and non-REM sleep is crucial for laying the foundation for a healthy life.
Wow.
For supporting that intricate wiring of the brain and setting the stage for optimal physical and cognitive development.
Okay, so then as babies grow into toddlers, those sleep patterns, they have to evolve too, right?
Of course, they do. As any parent knows, those early years are just a whirlwind of unpredictable sleep schedules, frequent night wakings, desperate pleas for nap time.
Desperate pleas for nap time, yeah.
Infants have what we call a polyphasic sleep pattern,
Okay.
meaning they sleep in these short bursts throughout the day and night.
Okay.
It can be incredibly exhausting for parents.
Absolutely, yeah.
Who are just longing for a predictable sleep routine and, let's face it, a good night's sleep themselves.
There's a reason that Go the F to Sleep, Adam Mansbach's book,
Yes.
becomes such a sensation.
I love that book.
But why do infants have these fragmented sleep patterns? What's going on there?
Well, it all boils down to the circadian rhythm,
Okay.
that internal clock.
Got it.
In infants, the circadian rhythm, it's immature,
Okay.
which explains why their sleep-wake cycles seem so random.
Gotcha.
But as children grow, their circadian rhythms gradually mature, leading to more predictable sleep patterns.
So that's why as toddlers get older, they start sleeping for longer stretching at night
Exactly.
and taking fewer naps during the day.
That's exactly right. By the time a child is 4, they typically transition from that polyphasic sleep pattern to a biphasic pattern.
Okay.
Which means they have a long stretch of sleep at night and maybe one nap during the day.
Gotcha.
Their little bodies are finally starting to sync up with the rhythms of day and night.
And even though, like, the total amount of sleep is decreasing, the ratio of REM to non-REM sleep is also changing, right?
It is, absolutely. As children grow, the proportion of REM sleep decreases while the proportion of non-REM sleep increases.
Okay.
This shift really reflects the changing needs of the developing brain as it transitions from building those initial neural connections to refining and strengthening them.
So it's like a shift from, like, construction to renovation.
That's a great analogy.
Okay, cool.
And this shift in sleep stages is particularly significant as we move into childhood because non-REM sleep, particularly that deep, slow-wave sleep,
Okay.
plays a critical role in a process called synaptic pruning.
Synaptic pruning, all right.
You can think of this process like a gardener pruning a tree
Okay.
by removing weak or unnecessary branches.
Right.
The gardener allows the remaining branches to grow stronger and healthier.
Okay.
So deep sleep is essentially helping to eliminate those weaker connections,
Gotcha.
allowing the stronger, more important connections to flourish,
Okay.
making the brain more efficient and powerful.
Cool. So synaptic pruning it's especially crucial during adolescence, right?
It is.
Which we all know is a period of dramatic physical, emotional, and cognitive changes.
Absolutely.
And not to mention a whole lot of sleep drama.
Yeah. A lot of sleep drama. Oh, the sleep drama of adolescence. It's a time of such profound transformation, and sleep plays a pivotal role in all of those changes. It's during this period we see some of the most perplexing and often frustrating sleep patterns emerge.
Like teenagers staying up late and sleeping in late.
Exactly. It's that classic teenage sleep struggle. Parents everywhere battling to get their teens out of bed in the morning, while the teens insist they're just not tired yet. But there's a biological reason for this.
Okay, so it's not just teenage defiance.
It's not just teenage defiance or a desire to annoy their parents, though it might feel that way at times.
Yeah.
During puberty, the circadian rhythm, that internal clock that regulates our sleep-wake cycles, undergoes a dramatic shift, pushing sleep times later.
Oh, so it's like their internal clocks are set to a different time zone.
Exactly, a couple of hours behind everyone else's.
So are their bodies literally programmed to stay up later?
They are. It's not laziness or a sudden aversion to alarm clocks.
Interesting. But what's the evolutionary advantage of this delayed sleep phase?
Well, one theory is that this later sleep schedule might have been beneficial for our ancestors, allowing adolescents to spend time bonding with their peers, exploring their independence away from the watchful eyes of their parents.
So it's like nature's way of giving them a window of time to kind of develop those social skills and test their boundaries.
Right, to figure out who they were apart from their families.
So those late-night chats and hangouts might actually have deep evolutionary roots.
Possibly, and it highlights the importance of understanding the biology behind teenage sleep patterns rather than just dismissing it as laziness or defiance. But let's not forget that this later sleep schedule coincides with a period of intense brain development, and deep sleep is playing a critical role in shaping those teenage brains.
Right. We were talking about synaptic pruning before, that process of refining and strengthening those neural connections. And you mentioned deep sleep is crucial for this process.
It absolutely is. In fact, research has shown that the intensity of deep sleep actually surges during adolescence, coinciding with significant improvements in things like cognitive function, reasoning abilities, emotional regulation.
It's like their brains are doing all this rewiring and fine-tuning while the rest of the world is asleep.
Exactly. But here's where things get really interesting. Remember how we talked about the fact that the adolescent brain doesn't mature all at once?
Yeah, you mentioned different parts mature at different rates.
Right, and it turns out that the back of the brain, which is responsible for processing visual and spatial information, matures first, followed by the frontal lobe.
And the frontal lobe is like the executive control center, right?
It is. It's responsible for planning, decision-making, impulse control.
So the part of the brain that helps teenagers make good decisions, resist those impulsive urges, and think about the long-term consequences of their actions is actually the last to fully mature.
That's right.
So it's almost like they have a powerful engine, but the steering wheel isn't quite calibrated yet.
It's a good analogy. And this developmental lag in the frontal lobe might explain why teenagers often engage in risky behavior. Their brains are literally still under construction.
So that makes it even more important for them to get enough sleep, right?
Absolutely, because chronic sleep deprivation can actually interfere with that brain development.
Making it even harder for them to make good judgments and control their impulses.
Exactly, and unfortunately, the demands of modern life often rob teenagers of the sleep they so desperately need.
Things like school and extracurricular activities, social media, all of it.
Right, the pressure to succeed. And this chronic sleep deprivation can have serious consequences, not only for their academic performance and mood, but also for their long-term mental and physical health.
It's kind of a recipe for disaster. So do you think we need to rethink our expectations of teenagers? Like, especially when it comes to those early morning schedules?
It's definitely something to consider. We need to be more aware of the importance of sleep, not just for teenagers, but for everyone. We tend to treat sleep like it's a luxury, something we squeeze in if we have time, but it's actually a fundamental biological need, just like eating and breathing.
And it's a need that changes throughout our lives, right? Evolving as we do.
Yes, absolutely. We've talked about the unique sleep patterns of babies, toddlers, and teenagers, but what happens as we move into adulthood and beyond?
Does it become less important as we age?
Not at all. In fact, as we age, sleep becomes even more critical for maintaining our physical and cognitive health.
Okay.
It helps protect our hearts, our brains, and preserves our quality of life. But as we get older, sleep also becomes more elusive.
It's like the time we need it the most, it's the hardest to get.
It's true, and there's a common misconception that as we get older, we simply need less sleep. But that's a myth.
Oh, really?
The truth is, our sleep needs don't actually change that dramatically as we age. What does change is our ability to get that sleep. It's not about needing less sleep, it's about being less able to sleep.
So even though grandma seems to be going to bed early and waking up at the crack of dawn, that doesn't necessarily mean she's getting all the sleep she needs.
That's right. Older adults often have just as much need for sleep as younger adults, but their sleep patterns are often more fragmented, their quality is diminished, and they're more susceptible to sleep disorders.
Which can really rob them of those precious hours of rest.
Exactly. Our bodies go through so many changes as we age, and it makes sense that those changes would affect our sleep.
So what's happening as we get older? What are the key changes that make it harder to get a good night's sleep?
Well, I think there are three key changes that are really important to understand. First, there's a reduction in both sleep quantity and quality. Second, we see a decrease in sleep efficiency, meaning it takes longer to fall asleep and we wake up more frequently throughout the night. And finally, older adults experience a disrupted timing of sleep, earlier bedtimes and earlier awakenings.
Okay, so let's break those down a little bit, starting with that reduction in sleep quantity and quality. What's happening there?
Well, remember our earlier discussion about deep sleep, that incredibly restorative state of sleep?
Yeah.
That's essential for consolidating memories, clearing out toxins from the brain, promoting cellular repair and rejuvenation.
Right?
Unfortunately, as we age, deep sleep takes a major hit.
Oh, those deep rejuvenating slumbers that we took for granted in our youth.
Yeah, they become less and less frequent as we get older.
So why is that? What happens?
Part of the answer lies in the aging process itself. As we get older, our brains undergo structural changes and certain areas begin to deteriorate more rapidly than others. And unfortunately, one of the areas most susceptible to this age-related decline is the region responsible for generating deep sleep.
Oh, so the part of the brain that helps us get restorative sleep is the very part that starts to decline as we age.
Exactly. It's a bit of a vicious cycle.
Wow. It sounds like an uphill battle against our own biology.
In some ways it is, but, it's important to remember that we're not entirely powerless.
Okay.
There are steps we can take to mitigate these age-related changes, and research is always uncovering new potential therapies. But before we delve into those solutions, let's talk about those other sleep changes you mentioned, starting with sleep efficiency.
Right.
What exactly does sleep efficiency mean, and how does it change as we get older?
Well, you mentioned it's like how much time we actually spend asleep while we're in bed. So it's not just about the number of hours, but how much of that time is actually spent sleeping soundly.
Exactly. And as we age, our sleep efficiency tends to decline, primarily due to an increase in nighttime awakenings.
I see.
Remember those blissful nights of our youth when we could fall asleep easily and just sleep soundly through the night?
Oh, I remember.
Well, as we get older, those nights become increasingly rare. Instead, we find ourselves waking up multiple times throughout the night, sometimes for no apparent reason.
So those awakenings disrupt our sleep cycles, making it harder to fall back asleep?
That's right, it robs us of those precious hours of restorative sleep.
It's no wonder so many older adults complain of feeling tired and unrefreshed, even if they've spent, a decent amount of time in bed. But why do we wake up more at night as we get older?
There's no single culprit. It's a complex interplay of factors, including age-related changes in our hormones, a natural decline in bladder control as those muscles weaken, and an increase in certain medical conditions.
Like sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome.
Exactly, even things like arthritis.
Wow. So it's a perfect storm of age-related changes that are conspiring against our sleep.
In a way it is, and those nighttime awakenings can also signal underlying health problems that need to be addressed.
So if we're experiencing persistent sleep problems, it's important to talk to our doctor
Absolutely.
to rule out any underlying medical conditions.
Sleep is a vital sign, just like our heart rate and blood pressure.
Right.
It can provide important clues about our overall health.
Well said. Now, we've talked about that decline in deep sleep and sleep efficiency, but what about that third sleep change you mentioned, the disrupted timing of sleep? What's happening there, and why does it seem like so many older adults are early birds?
That's where our circadian rhythms come into play once again.
That internal clock that governs our sleep-wake cycles?
Exactly. As we age, our circadian rhythms tend to shift earlier, making us feel sleepy earlier in the evening, prompting us to wake up earlier in the morning.
So it's not just a matter of preference or habit.
It's not. Their bodies are actually telling them to go to sleep earlier.
But why? What's driving this shift in our internal clocks?
One of the key factors seems to be a change in the timing of our melatonin production.
Melatonin, that hormone that helps regulate sleep.
As we get older, our bodies start within it earlier in the evening.
So their internal night falls a little earlier, even if the sun is still shining outside.
Exactly. And this earlier sleep schedule might align perfectly with some people's lifestyles, but it can create real problems for others.
Like if you're an older adult who wants to stay up to socialize with friends or enjoy an evening out.
Right, maybe catch up on their favorite TV shows.
But their body's telling them to go to sleep.
It can be frustrating. It's like being at a party when you're exhausted and ready for bed.
Right?
Your mind might want to stay engaged, but your body's pulling you in the opposite direction.
And if they fight those signals and try to stay up later, they might find themselves nodding off on the couch.
Exactly. And when we take those early evening naps, even if they're unintentional, we're essentially releasing some of that built-up sleep pressure, that adenosine that makes us feel sleepy.
Oh.
So when we finally do get into bed, we might not have enough sleep pressure to fall asleep easily.
Got it.
Or stay asleep throughout the night.
So we're caught in this double wind, falling asleep too early, waking up too early, all thanks to our circadian rhythm.
And this pattern of disrupted sleep can contribute to all those health problems we talked about earlier.
Right.
Increased risk of chronic diseases, cognitive decline, mood disturbances, accidents.
So is there a way to help older adults shift their circadian rhythm back to a more normal schedule?
It is possible to a certain extent. There are some non-pharmaceutical approaches that can help, such as carefully timed light exposure.
Light exposure.
Bright light, especially in the late afternoon, can help suppress melatonin production and delay the onset of sleepiness.
So instead of encouraging older adults to get their dose of sunlight in the morning, we should be encouraging them to get it in the late afternoon.
That's right. It seems counterintuitive, but that later light exposure can help push those circadian rhythms to a slightly later schedule, aligning their internal clocks more closely with the external world.
Interesting. It really shows how complex our sleep-wake cycles are and how they're influenced by so many factors, including our age and our environment. But what about that decline in deep sleep that we talked about earlier? Is there anything we can do to restore that stage of sleep in older adults?
It's a question at the forefront of sleep research, and there are some promising avenues being explored. One area that's particularly exciting is the use of brain stimulation techniques to enhance deep sleep.
Brain stimulation. That sounds pretty intense. How does that work exactly?
It's not as futuristic as it sounds. We use gentle electrical pulses to stimulate specific areas of the brain.
The areas that are involved in generating deep sleep?
Yes, exactly.
So you're essentially giving those aging neurons a little boost, helping them fire more synchronously and powerfully.
That's a great way to put it. And the early results are encouraging. We're seeing improvements in deep sleep quality in older adults.
Wow, that's great.
And we're hopeful that this could translate into better cognitive function, improved mood, and a host of other health benefits.
It's pretty exciting. It gives us hope that we might be able to claim some of that vital deep sleep.
It really challenges the assumption that we have to just accept these age-related declines as inevitable. It makes you think about how we view aging in general.
Right. What if we could slow down the aging process or even reverse some of its effects?
What if these declines are actually treatable conditions?
That's a profound thought. And it makes me wonder if there are other areas where restoring deep sleep in older adults could have a significant impact. We've already talked about memory, mood, and physical health. But what about other areas?
Well, there's growing research that suggests deep sleep plays a role in a wide range of physiological processes, including immune function, hormone regulation, and even cellular repair.
Wow, so it's not just our brains. Deep sleep is essential for the health of our entire bodies.
That's right. As we age, that decline in deep sleep could be contributing to a whole host of age-related health problems, from a weakened immune system to an increased risk of chronic diseases.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is. Sleep, aging, our physical health, mental well-being, it's all intertwined.
It is, and it really emphasizes the need for a more holistic approach to healthcare, one that recognizes the vital role of sleep in our overall well-being, particularly as we age.
We tend to compartmentalize our health, focusing on specific symptoms or diseases, but sleep is like this underlying foundation that affects everything.
I think of it as the vital signpost that guides us toward health and resilience throughout our lives.
I think this has been an incredibly insightful conversation. We've explored sleep across the entire lifespan, from the mysterious world of fetal sleep to the turbulent sleep landscapes of childhood and adolescence, all the way to the challenges and opportunities of sleep in our later years. And one thing's for sure, sleep is not just a passive activity, it's an essential process that shapes us from the moment we're conceived to our very last breath.
Absolutely. And the more we understand the science of sleep, the better equipped we are to harness its power to improve our health and well-being and perhaps even extend our lifespan.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into sleep across the lifespan, what's one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember?
Sleep is not a luxury, it's a necessity. At every stage of life, prioritizing sleep is an investment in both our present and our future.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this fascinating exploration of sleep across the human lifespan. We hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for this vital sign that shapes who we are and how we experience the world. Until next time, sleep well.